No defense. Reactions?
Shit, yeah, I have a reaction.
I pass.
All right, welcome to the reaction step of the Attack Action podcast. I'm Taylor, he's Isaac, and he's Colin. I don't know if you guys are in that order. But today we're going to be talking about the calling Dallas. So, fellas, your initial thoughts?
It was very exciting. I liked seeing some high-end draft decks played, right? Because in my personal experience and just what I've seen have been kind of smaller groups of players. So to see really like the cream of the crop, or just a huge player pool and huge card pool, some like really powerful decks emerged, and that was pretty fun to watch. Also, I would have maybe bet you $1,000 that control would not be hyper successful. So that was also a pretty fun surprise.
Hell yeah.
Bet you're glad he didn't make that bet.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me it was really cool just to see so many sealed games played. I think partially not having played that much myself, just due to time and everything, it was cool to see like what combos really can come out and what like things were really powerful. How people were finishing games, and stuff like that. So it was really fun to be able to just see a lot of it. And I think I liked the coverage in general, just because like they were showing more than one game per round a lot of the time. So it felt like it was just like a lot of stuff. So it was really fun to follow along.
Yeah, I definitely felt the calling, as it were. I was really bummed that I wasn't there, like getting to see a bunch of people I know, and I was like, texting with some homies and trying to like get updates, and they're like, duking it out, so updates are coming slow, and so that definitely like made me feel like I was missing out for sure, you know. Um, So it seemed like it was really cool, and I would have really loved to have been there. There were about like 500 players, I think, in the main event or something like that. So about half the size of Vegas, kind of. Um, but still, like, that's a pretty big uh, calling, and that's like a lot of logistics for like sealed and draft and that sort of thing. So it seemed like it ran pretty smooth. So for those of you who don't know about the Calling Dallas, they did, and correct me if I'm wrong here, fellas, they did 7 rounds of Swiss sealed and then cut to top 64 and did draft pods of 8 and then played 3 more rounds in day 1. And I think then cut to top 32 and then do some more drafting and sealed after that. I mean, drafting and Swiss after that, and then cut to top 8 from there. So that's the format. So if you can make it past the sealed part, it's just all draft for you.
Yeah, that sounds right. Which is a pretty long day one. I mean, they're shorter games. You're not playing constructed, but also your one sealed pool has to carry you pretty far throughout a long day.
Yeah, totally. It totally does. Yeah, because some people, maybe won early that I know, and then once they kind of got up against like, you win your first 4 rounds or first 3 rounds, and then now you're playing against people who have also done that. So it kind of weeds out like your like below average sealed pool into like having to play someone who has like an average or slightly above average sealed pool who's of a similar skill, and then it's like really hard to win.
Right. Like you can kind of win out with skill to a certain degree, like you're saying, but then it's like making top 64 out of 500 is still maybe asking quite a lot if you have a fairly mediocre pool.
Yeah.
But, that's just part of the game. I don't expect them to draft all the way.
I think it was like X2. Some X2s made it, right? I think top first cut
Um,
to 60. pretty sure. I thought someone posted that, but definitely tough to do with the seal deck. But I think, yeah, I think Isaac, you're right. Your skill and a mediocre deck can get you, I think, through those first couple rounds. But then after that, you're up against better players, and if they've got a better deck too, like that just makes things much harder. And there's definitely some interesting, kind of upsets I saw on stream that were fun to watch, if not, a little sad for the players. But that's just how it goes.
Totally. Yeah. Big shout out to Stephen Woolley of the Team Covenant team and cast and Nerd Empire, I think is probably the best way to do it. I think he went 7-0 with his Briar deck, which was pretty sick. He had some cool combos with the equipment, I guess, was like really huge for him because he had Plume and Mark of Lightning and the Suede Hides. So that just like ups your in a Summerwood shelter. But I think he was using his Plume to just basically go get like Weave Earth whenever he needed to.
Yeah.
Which is like a really dope play.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
Yeah, fetching a 0-cost pump is a pretty baller move.
Yeah, especially when it's red too. And so it like you're gonna fuse it basically or whatever. It pumps it by 3 or 4. And is maybe your second attack. There's just a lot of stuff, So that was like one of the coolest things I think, like Colin kind of mentioned, was like how players, when you play the same like kind of sealed deck or have tested so much for sealed, you've really found like these kind of little combos that kind of put you over the line a little bit in terms of like your skill in helping you like win games and stuff, which is really cool. It just shows the depth that there is to this format and why like the elo rating for limited play is different than that for constructed, because they can be really separate skills.
Totally.
For sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, I think
go ahead.
Steven's. I mean, I'm a big Team Covenant fan, so I watch a lot of their streams. I'm pretty active in their Discord, and like Steven's
Drank
just
the Kool-Aid, as
I,
it were.
I deeply. I buy a lot of stuff from them, but I think the way he thinks about building decks and like going about playing this game is really interesting. And like I don't think about it that way, but I enjoy listening to him like talk about how he like goes through and figures out like the best hands and like the best card combos and things like that. And he's very like meticulous in it. So I think he's a good player, and I was happy to see like get the updates all day of him just like going undefeated in that first part. And definitely, I think we'll talk about it later, but his match later on in the tournament versus Tariq was pretty sweet. So
yep. Isaac, you had something you wanted to.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say. So in your example or your point there, Weave Ice is a rare, right? So your
Pull of is
sorry.
All the weaves are.
All of them are rares. So you're what you're looking for like that, you're not going to have many rares spread across 3 characters. So those kinds of lines are kind of few and far between. So just for him to pull an Earth, and a Plume, and make that an integral part of his deck is pretty cool.
Yeah, totally. Super agree. I lost my train of thought there. So I think that there is, I think there's a real distinction too between sealed. Well, okay, this is where I want to start. We're going to stay on sealed. I think it's hard because we weren't there, so all of our knowledge is secondhand. From what I've pieced together, though, is that most people were trying to like play Briar out of their sealed pool. And I know all of us have played quite a bit of sealed and limited and stuff. Do you guys feel that when you open your 6 packs, that Briar is just the better pick every time, or what? What makes it so strong?
You want to go first, Colin?
Sure. I think the way I've thought about it and I heard other people chatting about it is I think if you have like a mediocre pool, because like, I think for each sealed pool, you have enough cards pretty much to build a deck for any of the heroes,
Hmm.
which is a little bit different than all the previous sets because there's only three. You can really, you probably make a deck for any of them. So really, the determining factor is a little bit harder to like pick out which is the best choice. And if it's not super clear and you've got enough like stuff to make Briar work, it seems like the easier choice because of like mainly the arcane damage that you can they're pretty much guarantee they can't block the majority of it. And then that, especially I think early on in the meta, the sealed meta, is just like unstoppable almost. And I think the the skill to play Lexi and Oldheim are just a little bit higher out the door. So I think Briar is kind of like that easier choice. But definitely, I think it's not just flat out better. I think it can be very difficult to beat and deal with all the arcane damage and then all the embodiment of earth tokens that can stack up. Um, but it just as easily like can get totally crushed by Lexi, for example. Put a little spot to Taylor and I's gameplay video.
Totally. Isaac, what are your thoughts about the Briar and Sealed?
I think Briar's kind of baseline may be more powerful than Oldheim and maybe more powerful than Lexi. Lexi has a lot of strengths, of course, but also kind of requires kind of large hands to kind of make something happen. Whereas Briar still has access to Earth, so like with two cards, you can still fire off Red Autumn's Touch or something like that. And also, one of the inherently difficult things about playing against Briar is that in a normal game, you use your life as a resource, right? You take damage in order to seize momentum and then swing back and force blocks, get damage through, come back with a powerful turn. But every time you just take damage from Briar, they build up 2 or 3 embodiment tokens. So then your swing back a lot of times seems to be like, well, then they can just block with 1 card for 5, take a little bit of damage, retain momentum, and then come back at you. So that's one thing I've found it pretty hard, or I've found pretty hard about playing against Briar. And I guess one other point is there's kind of a lot of strength in just like, you're like blue, so tomorrow, just has kind of silver linings, um, or that kind of just generic, not very impactful non-attack action always turns on your weapon. And a lot of times you're trying to get to your weapon with Briar. So like all of those cards that aren't that great, like playing an amulet, awesome, helps you make a lightning or an embodiment of lightning token, helps you get to your weapon. So all of these cards really like work towards your end game here. And all of the damage you're threatening is either unblockable or at like weird numbers. So a lot of times you come in for 2 arcane and 4, and then 2 arcane and 2, or something like that, which makes it just makes for a difficult game for your opponent to manage.
Mhm.
And I don't think at the highest level that Briar is more powerful than the other characters, but I think like to all those points, it's just a very strong, strong deck to play, just, baseline. But, I've opened certain pools where you're just, you don't have any Vela flashes or not much go again and not many, attack or non-attack actions. And, so then just passed on it. But, in general, it feels pretty, I guess, pretty baseline strong because of that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it totally does. I think it's also like, I don't know. I think it in Sealed, right? Briar does seem stronger because you can kind of like if the power level of the dex is a little lower because it's sealed, then just getting to Rosetta turn after turn and getting that 2 free damage is just really good. Plus whatever else you did before it. And that's kind of what makes, I think, it powerful, and obviously the arcane damage. But sometimes you just like open up stirs and like Vela flashes, and you don't have like Arcanic Shockwave or explosive growth or something. So sometimes the arcane damage doesn't come in as regularly, and I think the set seems to be a little bit designed that way, to have one character that just is like, look, if your packs, the randomness in which the cards come is just like kind of mediocre, like you get the correct cards you need for a hero, but in the wrong colors or something, you can kind of make Briar work. And you kind of need that to have the sealed gameplay, not just be like, well, didn't open it up anything, I'm just going to drop out of this tournament because what's the point? Because I know my pool is dog shit, right? And we see that in Monarch, right? We have Prism, which just has kind of like above average cards, and so you can just kind of like run some Prism stuff. My only caveat to that is that we didn't get that much limited play with Monarch to see if there were other archetypes. But my overall point in this TED Talk is that as the designers get better at designing for limited in the game, I think we will see the balance between the heroes in the set and the distribution of cards and that sort of thing kind of equalize a bit more, right? Because if you kind of think about like in Welcome to Wraith, right, it was like Bravo was leaps and bounds really above the other heroes in the limited format and that sort of thing. And maybe Viserai is the same way in Arcane Rising, like weird set to play sealed in, only character with a weapon, even if it only swings for one.
Yeah, I'll take the only guy with a sword.
Yeah. Etc. And this is obviously our best limited format or set for the limited format, and that's just because the design team is growing and getting better and that sort of thing. So whatever happens in whatever the next set is, I would expect it to be like the margins to be even thinner, assuming that there aren't any like Duskblade type of mistakes moving into that set or something.
Yeah, that's a pretty good point because, like, yeah, in Monarch, Prism is very good, just base kind of. But I mean, you could even argue Levia might be the most powerful with, I don't know, maybe crafting the best deck out of a draft, right?
Right.
But is maybe baseline the weakest.
Right. Totally. Yeah. Got a whole like risky business with Levia going on. All right. And before we kind of move into potentially some of our thoughts about draft or some of the gameplay we watched, is there anything in kind of this sphere of conversation that you guys wanted to mention before we move along here?
I guess I just found it pretty interesting, and we could talk about this at the end, maybe. I don't know.
We'll talk about it right now, baby.
Time is for that, but just watching the different games, the dynamics between each hero were really kind of really fascinating, right? Like Briar v Briar was just pretty much full aggro. Lexi v Briar was also pretty aggro, but with a little bit of timed blocking, especially on the Lexi side, because again, you can have these really powerful 3-card hands, right? You like play a pump and then play an arrow and choose dominate or +1, and it's like really, really good. But once you're reduced to kind of 2-card hands or lower, it becomes really, really weak. So the decision points on Lexi are tough. And then kind of Oldheim, I find kind of maybe the most difficult to play against, just to understand Like, so where is the line between, right? You have to apply some amount of pressure every turn because otherwise Oldhim can swing just like 7 for 2 cards or even more for 3 cards and like do a lot of damage in a very aggressive manner, right? So you have to pressure them enough to be able to avoid, making the decision on their next turn, whether you have to block 9 or, take 9. So walking the line between applying enough pressure to strip their cards and keep them on their heels while also pitch stacking your deck or building good enough combos on your end with your few amount of cards to get enough damage through to kill them, right? Because in the perfect world, you could, pitch and build up and, just have these wild combos to get through their defenses, every game and, probably win most games. Like in our experience, we've had a lot of, Briar turns are like for 20 or more damage. And those weren't like pitch stacked. They're just drawn excellent hands. But, if you take your foot off the gas and in order to build up and get over the top, then a lot of times you're facing down a mulch, which makes it a little tougher. So I guess with more practice, I'll have a better understanding of how to play into that. But it's not only are you facing a controlling deck where your resources have to be spent wisely, but just any breathing room and they can swing back, fairly aggressively. I guess that's all my thoughts on just the general matchups or the way the heroes kind of behaved, when played out over so many games.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it kind of seems like on paper, right, that the potentially Lexi, I don't know. There is some sort of rock, paper, scissors, right, between the 3 heroes, in terms of like that Lexi can just like dominate and get damage through that way, and that Briar has these like kind of go wide turns with like mixed damage that's potentially tougher to block. But then like Oldhim, right, has just like a really consistent game plan, which we saw, and that's like also really hard. I think, I guess my final point, sorry to hog all the time there, people's champ, Dog Master, or Dog Connoisseur, I don't know, Dog Enthusiast, is that there will be, I think players, and it's too bad we don't have more time with this, but players will get better at being like, oh, I'm playing Oldhim now, or I'm playing Lexi. Okay, my strategy with my cards now is going to be this, right? And like potentially they're already doing that, but it doesn't also appear so, right? Because we're coming out of like the Monarch meta, which is just like, this is my game plan, try and stop me. You know what I mean? Where now you have to be a bit more flexible in this format with your strategy and stuff. Dog Papa, you got any final thoughts there?
I mean, I hear what you guys are saying. I think that's exactly where I struggle in the sealed play of this set, is like, one, just being able to play whatever hero like well enough. I think there's so much going on. There's so many triggers, which are easy to miss or forget about. That it takes a lot of your attention just to focus on that, and then also like, I'm not a person who can like make a deck and be like, oh yeah, I remember there's like 12 blues and like I got these 3 really good cards. Like I can remember a couple cards, but the rest kind of is a blur. But I think over a longer tournament, you get at least used to the deck you've built, but then knowing how you can take this very freshly made deck and pilot it against these other heroes who are also new, so understanding how they're coming at you. And I think, Taylor, we talked about this last week at some point, of like just knowing what's available to them that could possibly be coming, and just like always thinking
Yeah.
about that, because like in a sealed pool, it's like it could literally be any available card could be coming at you. Just have no idea, because you know it's whatever they opened, and it might not be what's like the most optimal for a constructed deck or something like that. But in sealed, it's like what they got, and they're going to do something kind of unexpected with it, which I think it makes it really fun format. And I think that was really fun to watch in the stream, was just kind of seeing people like do these things, like, oh cool, like I didn't think about using those, that kind of combo, or like reacting to a specific play in a certain way. So yeah, I mean,
Yeah, like Bramble Spark, Ball Lightning, Mark of Lightning, 4 damage for the win,
totally,
type of deal.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm curious if I have only played the one draft, if y'all think that draft is more balanced than sealed in this set, or if you think they're pretty similar, because I feel like, at least in playing, I felt that sealed is just so swingy sometimes, and that I had like no control. And watching the draft games in the top cuts was like, they looked much like more coherent and like strong, like overall strong decks, especially as we got higher up. That I'm you know I'm just curious what you guys' thoughts on that.
Okay. Yeah. I have a lot of thoughts about that,
All right.
which is good, because I do this for a tiny supplemental bit of income. Um, I don't know.
Join our Patreon.
Yeah, totally. Boom, plug it. Uh, so I think that is a loaded question. So, I mean, first off, the skill in draft is reading the signals and knowing what's going on at the table. So as cards like wheel back around, you can make the best picks, right? So like you have to think like, okay, here's my cards. There's 8 people here. I'm going to see 2 cards out of this pack, right? So, this would be my pick. Got to try to kind of vaguely remember what's in here and see what's like coming around the table and like remaining open, right? Um, and so it all like starts there. So if you can't do that, then it's not uh, a even environment for the decks, right? And the draft and that sort of thing, and the people you're playing against. But the fact that you can make all of those decisions, right? You make like 35 decisions to make one cohesive game plan, kind of, uh, definitely can smooth out the power level between the heroes and make it so that then like player skill is important. But I mean, the real skill for that is really like what your picks were in the draft. And if you can draft really well, and then it's like a combo, right? Then you have to play the game really well with the cards you have drafted. And so like one of those a big takeaway there is and a thing that sets players apart is like, instead of just drafting cards, draft decks, right? That makes sense. So and it takes like a lot of practice. You have to start to like know the card pool a lot and like understand like your little combos that could happen and cards that are going to lead into certain like decks and that sort of thing. Which is like a pretty high level play, but like that's like kind of I think the evolution of draft is, right. You don't just pick like, well, this is the best red card in this pack, and this is the best other red card in this pack, right? You like have to read the signals and then draft a deck, not just the cards. Over to Isaac.
You should have told me that before I drafted in Vegas.
Well, this is like new for me, right? Like I've played a lot of limited stuff, and I've been playing a ton of limited Tales of Aria, and it's like concept. I think that's probably around in a lot of other limited play, but it's something that I've been like focusing on for the last couple of weeks, is trying to draft decks rather than cards. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just second that, really. I mean, yeah, any complaints I have about balancing issues between heroes or cards or whatever in sealed kind of goes out the window in draft, right? Because if you're the only player drafting a hero at the table, or one of two players drafting a hero, and you're kind of far from the other player, you're really in a much better position. And kind of to Taylor's point, it's not just about having a separate hero, but if you're drafting just a different archetype, right? Like, so say you didn't get any Autumn's Touches or Bramble Sparks or whatever, but you picked Briar because you're given those signals, and you got a lot of Briar. So you could have a lot of red Vela Flashes and lightning cards, and you can build a deck around that, and it gets you to your weapon, right? So red Vela Flash into Electrify into Rosetta is like just as powerful as Bramble Spark, blue Autumn's Touch, right? And so I guess you don't want to be one of too many people drafting the same hero at a table, but to Taylor's point about drafting a deck, right? It can, because I've drafted decks where it's like the deck's really good, and maybe you win most games with it, right? But in some hands or some games, your cards just line up, and then you're playing your third game and you keep drawing the opposite element to fuse with or whatever, so you just keep having 4-card hands that don't really swing for 5 or something, which I think is inevitable. You have to have like some degree of both elements in a limited format, but it really shows kind of how cohesively you drafted your deck when you're looking at the consistency of it over an entire tournament. Also, speaking of blue counts, Colin, one of my pet peeves, I hate when the other player goes first and swings at me and I have a hand of blues. So you just block it out, right? Because it doesn't matter. But I'm like, oh, well, there goes the
my resource
curve in my whole deck. Now we begin the game.
Yeah, I've been there. I think the one time I actually did know how many blues I had, I was like, well, I'm down to like 6. And I won't see them before I die.
Totally. Yeah. It's drafting this set, both formats are really fun, and I think drafting is by far the most fun, just because like if you're a nerd playing this nerd game, you get to do more nerd stuff, which is like more decisions you have to kind of make in the draft, right? And it's a little bit more I don't know, social, I suppose, right? There's like more sensory input. There's like table talk happening. You have 15 cards in front of you. You have to pick one and pass it. And then here comes 14 more cards, and you have to do that
It's
repeatedly and stuff.
more interactive.
Yeah, totally.
I mean,
I
it's
agree.
more of a game, in itself.
Yeah.
I mean, draft is a big element, a lot of board games. So like that part, I think I did like that the most. But I've only drafted once, so like my exposure and experience with it is super limited.
Definitely.
Well, we're gonna have to get you up to the Great North up here for draft times.
All right. I just gotta have some free time and go to my local store that's been doing it like weekly. I'm just like,
oh yeah,
haven't had time. But
oh yeah, shout out to our local store, Oasis, Hidden Oasis cards in McKinleyville.
Nice.
I've been crushing it. Been having a great time there.
Odyssey Games, Pasadena. They're coming up.
Hell yeah. Isaac, you, before I was like cutting you off and that sort of thing, you had some.
Oh, I was just going to say that I agree. I think draft is far and away superior and more fair or balanced. And like Colin said, the little game you play before your games is also really fun. So I would choose that competitively, anytime. Just speaking to Steel, the set is kind of complex enough or nuanced enough that I still enjoy opening 6 packs and laying out all the cards and looking for those little lines, right? Like you said, like, oh, I have a red weave earth and a plume. That's for a blue. I can always have this pump,
Yeah.
or have the pump again.
I can play it
So,
twice,
like,
right?
yeah,
My deck
laying
now
out
has 6 more damage in it,
totally. So,
Yeah.
like, looking at those lines with cards in front of you just with a half an hour I still find enjoyable, even if it's like, my least favorite format with Blitz. Probably it's still great.
Totally. Blitz is way down there. That's a whole other reaction step, though.
We'll save that for Skirmish season.
We're very reactive. We have a lot of reactions.
Totally. Whoopsh, whoopsh. Do you guys want to talk about potentially your favorite matches that you guys got to watch on stream?
Sure. Why don't you go first? I've been talking a lot.
Oh, okay. I feel like I've been talking a lot, but that's what we're here for. Boy, it's really raining outside. What a stormy day.
Yeah, here too. It's also winter now. All of a sudden, as of the last 3 days where we live, it's been pretty intense. It's going to rain 2 inches tonight.
Yeah, Colin's picking oranges off the tree still.
It's a brisk 70-degree day here.
Yeah. Down there in Dorne.
They don't have sky water in LA,
Yeah, I mean,
totally.
we do, but it's pretty dirty.
Up here in the north. Anyway, yeah. So I think my favorite match was I'm not really sure what round it is, but it's definitely day 2. And a shout out to our boy Steven, gets to play Tarek, and it's an Oldheim mirror.
Round 11.
Nice, nailed it.
Yep.
I thought that game was excellent. In terms of like both players kind of like understanding what their game plan was and reacting to what the other person's game plan was as well. Like I actively watched both of them like pitch stack their deck like at the same time. Like Steven puts down like a Glacial Footsteps with the blues and the ice cards all next to it, and then does it with a second one, but the fact that Targ had like Earth Oldheim, that he just like continually had the ability to stop 2 damage every single turn and wasn't losing those cards, kind of won him out in that game. It seemed like too he had a few more cards as well in his deck. And yeah, it was just like a really good match. It was like having watched other matches where some people like didn't, were just kind of playing out the cards or whatever. It just like was a really high level match of Fab that was great to see. And is like, one of the reasons the game can be really cool is because of that stuff. Like, see your opponent's pitching like a big attack with the right resources at the bottom. Like then you like stack your deck to also be able to deal with that when that comes back around and that sort of thing, and keeping that in your mind to be able to like kind of keep up a little bit of pressure to where they just can't get that off and that sort of thing. It was an excellent match.
And Steven had Winter's Whale too, right?
Yeah.
He was coming in with the Majestic one, so like even harder for Tariq to really like stay on top of that, because the Frostbite and coming in every turn. But I think because of all the Earth cards, he was blocking that out, like a card and a defense reaction, not taking that Frostbite like really came through. And then having so many defense reactions at the end of the game too, where like Steven's trying to like finish it out and he's just like turn Timber or whatever, and Oldheim's like defense reaction, just closing it off. So it was really cool. And it was like I think Steven like did a really great job. I don't think I think I caught like the second 2/3 of the game and not the beginning, so I didn't really see how they started. But it was just like I was like, come on man, you could do it, and then just every time defense reaction, just like, oh
yeah, totally.
It's pretty brutal, but it was a great match.
Yeah, because when you're that versed in like watching Flesh and Blood, right? You're like, oh yeah, that's why it makes it a good like spectator sport, right? Is like once you understand like watching what they pitch, you're like, there goes the glacial. That's coming back later. Is this gonna happen? You're like, cool, I bet this is the turn. And you're like, oh gosh, and then it's like foiled or whatever. It's just anticipation and stuff is pretty good.
Totally.
Isaac.
Yeah, I thought that was a really great match because the Winter's Whale deck lost, right? Because it's like having that weapon applies, it's the same amount of damage, but applies pressure in your off turns. So you have like this kind of huge advantage throughout the game, and that you have a little bit more pressure on their resources, especially with certain cards like Snow Under or Glacial Footsteps that have very specific costs. But
Every card has a specific cost.
Right, but some are like 4 and cost 2 cards anyway.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah.
Good
so
point. Frostbite doesn't matter.
Well done, sir.
Thanks, though. But you could tell is like the Earth deck just had a game plan from the beginning. He's like counting their discard piles from the beginning, and knows that he can get around Winter's Whale with Earth reactions, and follows the exact same plan the whole time. And you can see the other deck. He realizes what's happening and he adjusts, and he also pitches his deck, but it's a little bit more. He's like a little bit more uneasy, especially as he kind of starts losing. And there's a few plays in it where, like, one time he played a yellow Icequake into his Winter's Whale for an even 6. I think because he was kind of panicking and running out of cards, and felt like he needed to apply some counter pressure, but it just kind of removed one of his like clutch threats.
Yeah,
right. Tariq just like blocked with 2 cards. Didn't matter. And anyway, there are a few plays like that where it's just like it just felt very methodical the way the Earth build worked around its kind of disadvantage in that it was constantly threatened with Frostbite, and like executed it pretty perfectly. I thought that was very educational to watch, especially because for me, like in Colin and I's game, I'm just not naturally a control player. I don't really enjoy it, and my brain doesn't. I like kind of mid-range poker matches where you're trading blows with your opponent and stuff. So for me, drafting or playing Oldhim, I just naturally drift more mid-rangey or looking for exchanges and ways to win the game. So watching these kind of like just super disciplined and methodical control decks is it's a very classic archetype, but just watching players do it very well with Oldhim was pretty educational for me.
Yeah, and the game you're referencing is our sealed matches where the 3 of us play each other.
Right.
Yep, yours and Colin's game. Just to shout out the YouTube page.
That one hasn't come out yet. It'll be coming soon.
Teaser.
Yeah,
no spoilers.
And if you're watching this late, it's already there,
yeah.
and you may have already watched it.
Who knows?
Is there any other favorite matches you guys had? One of my quick ones was when Matt Rogers just got absolutely smoked on stream. That was like pretty fun to watch.
That was pretty good.
And his reaction too, it was like, oh God, I forget what happened, but it was like he got like a tiny bit of breathing room and his plans were completely foiled or something, and his expression or his body language was just like, he hangs his head and it's like, oh yeah, of course that's how this match is going. But it was awesome.
I think they both had kind of mediocre turns at the end, when they're both on very low life, and either one of them could have won it pretty much, but both had just kind of more dead cards. There was one point though he could have popped Cracker Jacks and swung Icequake for 7 instead of 6, which really surprised me.
When he saved it, doesn't he like finger it like he's about to, and then he just doesn't? Yeah.
But he has a larger resume than me, so maybe I'm not to judge.
Yeah, that was a good one. I think, not full matches, but I love the end of Brendan Patrick versus Tim Button. Like it was just a good game. They were like both kind of in there. They were both trading blows, and then Brendan Patrick sets up like a really good play, and he goes for it, and then Tim Button just like double sigil, and he takes 2 arcane, and then like Tim Button has kind of like a mediocre turn after that, and Brendan Patrick goes down to 1, and then Tim Button just sigils him a 3rd time, and it's just like, ah, dude,
No.
that is rough. Like, how are you gonna know there's 3 sigils in there? It's a rare card. Like,
You can't play around that.
yeah,
I
you
don't
really,
even I don't play around lightning press much either, because it's like, what are you gonna do? You
yeah,
know?
yeah,
It's so funny. I think there's becoming like maybe a mythos in the Flesh and Blood North America community where like if your last name is Bun, you're gonna beat anybody who named Brendan Patrick. You know,
it's true now.
totally. Poor guy's getting roasted all over the place. Friend of the pod, Brendan Patrick. Shout out to you.
No fault of his. I mean, you can't do anything there, like except not go down to 1.
Totally.
But like,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he
Oh,
makes
yeah.
top 8. You know,
yeah,
Tim Bunn does not.
Yeah, I was like heartbroken in his quarterfinals game, where he just like, he's at this point where he kind of, and sometimes you have to do this in the game. You just kind of have to ask the opponent, like, do you have it?
Yeah.
Right. And because it's like the better play if they don't have like a very good hand that they drew into kind of randomly off of Polar Blast, then you'll win. Right. So I think it's like the correct play. Or that's
Totally.
like how I would choose to play. But then he did have it by exactly the right amount of damage.
Yeah. So dumb.
Which just
Yeah,
like
so
sucks.
yeah. So what we're talking about is in the quarterfinals, Brendan Patrick plays Nicholas or Nathan, the guy who winds up getting second. Sorry. I
Zimmerman.
feel like
yeah.
Zimmerman. And it's a Lexi mirror. And Zimmerman leads off with Polar Blast, right? Pay or be dominated. And talking with Brendan, he had like a red arrow and electrify like set up. Like he had a red arrow in hand and electrify in arsenal, right? So he just needs to like save a resource card.
2 cards.
Yeah, just a resource card, like a yellow or whatever, and then dominate
an
it.
arrow and
Yeah, and dominate it for the win. And so he like, the right play is to be like, there's no way he rips or has like a red arrow this late in the game, and Zimmerman off of the Polar Blast rips a red arrow right off the top, sets it in, dominates it. And because Brendan doesn't pay, right? He doesn't pay for the Polar Blast. And so he shivers it for +1 and it's exact lethal.
He also pumps it maybe, or I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah.
Yep. And that's how it goes in single elimination games.
Yep, totally. And it's like, that's just part of the game, unfortunate as it is, right? It's like the right play is to not pay for it, right?
Right. Well, I don't even know how many blues he had, right? Or maybe it was pay 1 resource, but it's
if anything, it's just like strip a card, right?
Yeah.
And when you're getting down to it, it's like just those are really valuable. So,
and he can dominate with Shiver anyway. So all you're looking at is like
just losing a card.
If I don't pay for it, is the +1 from Shiver instead of the dominate going to get you there? It's like a very specific circumstance, right? Like you could lose no matter what, or you could win no matter what, but it's like just if he has it with the +1 from Shiver, does it get him there? Which is
totally
pretty rough. But
yep.
I really liked a game in round 13, Riley versus Laystrom. They played Briar versus Lexi. And I think I just like this game because I've been watching a lot of Oldheim Control up till then. And this game was nuts. It just like full aggro might have lasted 4 turns. I think Lexi just lays into him, and the Briar guy has like 2 red ball lightnings, which is a pretty gross amount of ball lightnings.
Oh, I remember
and
this
like some
game.
other
Yeah.
cards.
Yeah.
And so he just is like, well, it's not worth it to block. Right? I'm going to go down to 2 or whatever, and then just fires back with an equally incredible hand. And anyway, it got right down to it, and it was really good in the end. And the Lexi player like barely wins.
Yeah, he has like he just takes all of that damage because his hand just doesn't block, but is like really good on offense, right? 2 red ball
it's like
lightnings.
with like a Bramble Spark, and then you can swing Rosetta also, or you know what I mean? Like the blocking value is much less than the damage
than the damage output. Yeah. That I remember that round. Bananas.
Yeah.
I read there's a great ending in round 5, Caleb versus Brandon. He plays Sting of Sorcery into Ball Lightning, and then a Bramble Spark into Lightning Surge. So it was just like doubled up like Arcane on everything, and it was just like, oh man. He just, I don't even think he set that up. He just like drew into it, but it was like, them's the cards you want to see together for sure.
Totally. Yeah, I really like all of this like damage amplification that comes from lightning. I think it's a really cool design space, and really thematic too, for lightning.
Yeah. There's some cool like sidestep plays too. Round 4, this guy Eric is attacking, and then he's playing against Oldheim, and Oldheim uses his ice reaction, so he has to put his final card on top of his deck, and in reaction he plays Sutcliffe Suede Hides so that he can pitch his final card, so that he can play I think he had a non-attack action in Arsenal or something, but like he pitched it then so that he didn't have to like put his card down, and then he like wait, what is Suede Hides does?
It gives you go again.
It gives you go again. Yeah, so it was his last card because he just wanted to swing his Rosetta. So like he just react, breaks those, comes in with his sword, and I was just like, that was a smooth, sidestep of
smart.
Yeah, that's dope. Yeah, really fun.
Yeah,
all right, go ahead.
I was just going to say there's some pretty fun instant speed plays kind of all around in this set.
Yeah, totally. I'm enjoying those interactions moving forward. Okay, so a couple more things. We're kind of running out of time. But before we get to kind of the top 8 and kind of just talking about like what happened there and who won and that sort of thing, I think we should briefly touch on kind of the judging and some of the stream production quickly, because that I think is worth it to talk about, or something worthwhile to talk about for sure.
Let's do the stream first, because I feel like it's less of a discussion and more just some like noticeable things. Especially, as someone who's recently been learning a lot about production and stuff. It was just like one, it was like the audio issues was just so bad. It was like their voice, like the commentator's voice and their like video was just 2 seconds off, like throughout the entire weekend.
Yeah, really bad in day 1.
Yeah, the lighting is like somehow it's too dark on the table, and yet there's still glare on the cards, which I'm just like baffled how that happens. It's just like, get some better lighting in there. And then,
or if you're already dealing with glare, then just freaking put the light closer.
Yeah, like at least like make it brighter so it's not like grainy, dark video.
Yeah, which I don't get, because they have a whole like trellis.
Yeah, they have a whole trellis
thing set up already.
Just put
like, why not just put a light on there, or
put some box lights? Soft light on everything. But I don't know.
Yeah.
I think
I know they're already doing like so much and all of this other stuff, but it's like, just let's just do one like extra little step here.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of nitpicky. I think they've definitely like stepped it up beyond anything we had previously. But you know, like even the camera quality is just like everything's 1080 HD, except then like the camera just looks like it's probably the lighting too. It honestly would probably be fixed by the lighting, but it just does not look that high quality. I did like the added kind of in between segments with random British guy who was like doing like deck techs and also just talking about like the calling itself. I thought that was fun. I didn't like pay attention to most, but it was like, oh, like they're actually like doing something and not just looping the same video and music for 30
Totally.
minutes.
That like Gomez Adams fella. Yeah, that guy's great.
Great mustache.
I'm super in it. Yeah. As a mustachioed man, I was on board.
Who's the British announcer?
It's just like in between rounds, they're like, we're going to take a short break.
No, I know, but like, do you know?
I don't know who that guy is. Yeah, no.
Is it just a British voice because it gives the deck tech more credibility?
Probably.
I don't.
Is that what they're doing?
I mean,
I don't know.
I'm for it, you know. Yeah, so I thought that was nice in general. Like, you know, like I mentioned it before, like having more games. Like I think they did almost. I think one round they had 3 games that they featured even. Like maybe that's wrong, but at least like 2 games per round. So it was like really cool to be able to like see both featured matches. Just a lot of gameplay. I guess my last.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No.
Well, I was just instead of having like half dead air,
Yep.
having 2 games is like way better.
Yeah.
But anyway, what's your last point there?
My last point is about the commentators, which like just wish they would make fewer mistakes about what cards are on the table and how they interact. I know they're not judges, but like, you know, just when they keep calling the same cards like the wrong names, and you know, saying, "Oh yeah, these interact really well together," and it's just like they don't they don't interact at all. Like, what was it like? We were talking about it earlier, Isaac. It was like one of the.
Oh yeah, it's Weavice Thump, which Weavice does not pump Thump and does not turn it on. So there's this whole thing where this guy pitched them together, and the announcers talked about what a good setup that is, and then I'm like, no, it's not. That doesn't even work. But moving on, you know. And then later in the game, he draws them and then plays them. And then so neither player at the table or the announcers or any judges, because this game is streamed, there's judges right there. So like nobody catches it or anything, which at the, you know, I mean, I was like pretty blown away. They're just that not a single person caught it. And then there were more examples throughout. And don't get me like the announcers were very, very energetic and very entertaining. And I do not think I would have done as good of a job talking about games all day. You know, I think that's a very great skill. But
Totally.
I do think both in the announcers, which doesn't affect the game so much, but also the judging once again was just almost every match I watched, there was some form of misplay or inadvertent cheating, or you know, like popping deep blue on your opponent's turn to play your plume to get a defense reaction, which is a huge power play, which you could not have done because deep blue is an action and you can't anyway. There's like many examples, and I think that so I've like never watched like Magic tournaments like this or whatever, so I don't know if I'm being like a little bit too like judgy or negative. I just like the only thing I have to compare it to is like sporting events, right? Where like you know, you just don't have like rampant misplays or like the judges or referees like don't know the rules or things like this. So just to me personally, maybe just because I'm new, it's like pretty jarring. In like a competitive, it's like the highest level event we've ever had, you know. And I think there were even, I think in the finals, you know, he has a frostbite token and does not pay extra for Oldheim's ability, which is a mistake I've made personally, but not with 2 announcers, 2 players, and however many judges are watching the finals.
Right. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. That's
anyway.
and you know, I think that's the big thing, or not the big thing, but it's like these are the things that for the game to continue its success that need to be shorn up, right? Is that everybody involved in putting on the production of showing the world the game has to be on top of how the game is played, right? Like it's the same crew that did the Vegas calling, the amount of judges, and I'm sure they haven't learned like a ton since they did that last time. You know, it's like a whole new set with a bunch of new interactions and that sort of thing. And that was one of our like critiques of that event, was that the judging could have been better, like, you know, better demeanor, better knowledge of the game and rules and stuff. Um, and it seemed like that was still happening at this calling. And like, if you're gonna have a feature match on stream, I think you need to have like a dedicated judge there whose sole job is to make sure that those games go smoothly, right? Like, it doesn't matter if it happens, I mean, unfortunately, but down at table like 400, right? But if you're on the feature match for the world to see, like, we have to have someone there, especially in the top 8 games and the championship game, when you can see them on camera watching the game, that they need to be able to be like, yeah, oh, sorry, excuse me, that's not a legal play you can make, because those matches, the top 8 matches, are not timed anyway, so it doesn't matter. It's not like the game's going to go to time or something like that, right?
Right. And again, I'm not just trying to like hammer, like this whole production is awesome and excellent.
Totally.
But just I think because I am not a judge and I don't know all the rules, I ask Colin about rules all the time,
Totally.
So like, and I have like played and play tested so much less than like, every like high or professional top end player or whatever I know. And just the fact that it's like so jarring for me and I see so many misplays and miscalls and all that as like kind of just a regular player. I think that's also why
Above
it's
average.
a little bit. Thanks.
Yeah.
You're good looking too.
Oh, thanks. That's not what I said, but that's fine.
But just because like it's like I'm not an expert or a judge, and there's just like rampant, misplays,
Totally.
miscalls, whatever. Just even to me,
Yep.
just makes it kind of like more surprising, I guess.
Yeah, and I totally understand that. My pushback on that is like, it's your job to judge and officiate, so you need to do it, right?
Yeah, I'm curious. I was trying to do some research on this, but I don't where or if they have this kind of information on their site or anything. If that's expected at like a high level tournament for a judge, if they see a misplay to like stop it and do it, or if it's on the players to do that. Like, and my hunch is that it should be like, if you see something wrong as a judge, you stop, make sure that you understand what's going on, and then like they can fix it or whatever. But like, there's like judges next to them at the feature table. It's like you see them in camera the whole time, like watching the game, and it's like you're watching the same thing I'm watching, and that's not right. Like, that's clearly.
Yeah, and that's the question, right? Like, is it the policy not to interfere in the game state unless a judge is called, or are we oblivious to how the game is played, right? Like, which one of those is it? Because
that is a good point, though.
Yeah, if it's a policy, cool, then that's totally fair. Like, I can be behind that. But if it's like you should be catching those things and you just don't know the rules, then that's not okay, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And then also,
Okay.
Be cool. And this is definitely in like the judging, conduct document. Like, judges should be very courteous to everybody there, and I feel like the way I've heard some of them talk to people in my own limited experience at the calling, and reports I've heard from other people, is like they're kind of rude sometimes. And you're like, dude, like, we're just here playing a game, trying to have fun, and like, compete and do well, and your attitude is like really out of line. I know it's frustrating. It's got to be frustrating to be a judge because you get called in situations that are probably primarily heated
Yeah.
and contentious, but that's your job. Like that's what you're there to do. So like either just kind of learn to deal with that better, or we need to figure out a way of like being like, okay, well, what's your name, judge? Because I'm gonna go talk to somebody about your behavior in this, because like
Totally.
it's very clear in their guidelines that the judges should uh, you know be at the same level of conduct that the players are. My dog is making an appearance in the video right now.
Nice. I was wondering if you could see her. That's great.
Wouldn't be a pod without dog stuff.
That's what primarily the reason we adopted her was so that we could do her in the podcast.
Yeah, and this would be I think the final point on the judging situation. Like, I totally understand if somebody comes at you in a rude manner, for sure, and that can be a little bit more understanding. Your day is just as long as the players, and perhaps your job is like much, much harder. But ultimate, part of as a judge, you're part of the experience also that those people are having. And so, to just remember that like sometimes a person's experience in this game can be affected by a bunch of different factors, whether that's you as the opponent being rude or you as the judging staff being rude. And the opposite of that is true too. If you're like really nice and courteous in either of those jobs, it can really affect the experience of a player positively or negatively, and to keep that in mind for sure.
Totally.
Okay, top 8. So top 8, we have a final draft, and we wind up with 5 Briars in the top 8 draft, 2 Lexis and 1 Oldheim.
That's so wild.
Finish it off.
Oh, and 0 Matt Rogers.
Oh yeah. Ha!
Sorry, Matt Rogers, who probably doesn't watch our show.
Yeah, totally.
I don't think he watches, but when you're like one of the best players, then you just get rooted against sometimes,
Totally. Thanks for watching, though, if you are Matt Rogers.
Yeah, leave a comment.
Yeah, we'll send you a t-shirt.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Remind me about the t-shirt at the end of the pod.
Okay.
So we have 3 players basically wound up with the fundamentals of drafting, right? Reading signals, figuring out what's open, and 5 players maybe got freaked out and just like tried to draft like the strongest hero and really tried to force it or whatever, or didn't have room to pivot. And what happens is we have shout out to Nam, the only Oldheim player, and he winds up taking the whole thing, and he's just on like a pretty linear Oldheim control Earth strategy: block everything out, swing Titan's Fist, run them out of resources, and then just come at them with some kind of bigger attacks and rinse and repeat. Get like a 15 plus turn game and just keep swinging the fist. Fist them, fist all your opponents. And that I think is surprising to me, actually, that the draft wound up being like that and that control was so effective. Talk to me, fellas.
Yeah, when I first saw this set, I was kind of surprised that like Oldheim got, 2 defense reactions plus Summerwood Shelter, which I thought was kind of scary maybe. But since then I've not been in a situation where like one player at an 8-man table was drafting Oldheim, so got all of those in their deck, right? Like the only time I've seen it played, they have, like maybe 1 yellow defense reaction and 1 yellow Summerwood Shelter, so it's like less of an issue. But if you just have like blue earth cards, blue ice cards, all of the defense reactions from, from all of those packs, you kind of really see how it plays out. And I'm hoping that this is not, indicative of the future in draft, because if you split up, if there are 2 or 3 Oldheims at a table, I would hope that this deck would be less oppressive, because it was extremely oppressive and seems fairly unbeatable, or
Well,
arguably unbeatable. But it's just he got all of the good cards, and there was only one other character drafting ice, right? Like I'm unsure how many ice cards Brendan had, but Ice Lexi and Oldheim Control met in the finals. And those, I think that's an important thing to note is, yeah, the Briars were fishing for probably red Earth cards, but the Oldheim deck got all the good Oldheim cards, especially defensive ones they wanted, as well as, their kind of pick of the litter of ice cards, and probably, saw enough blue Earth cards because maybe they're less of a priority for Briar, so that everything was just kind of wide open for their taking. It seems.
Colin,
Are my
your
thoughts
thoughts?
on that?
I'm pretty sure Nam, or is it Nom Nom? He played Oldheim in like every draft round, right?
Yeah, he played Oldheim
Yep.
the whole day.
I mean, that's crazy to me because it's like either he, like nobody else did. I don't know what like the breakdowns were in those draft pods, but like it seems kind of hard to draft the same character every time.
Yeah,
Um,
3 times in a row.
and it's, I would assume it was intentional, like like he wanted to do that. He wanted to, just play that control game. Um, but yeah, I mean, just being able to like do be the only one on that and just like block everybody out. And I can't remember from the top 8 games if it seemed like people were like reacting to his game plan, or if they just kept like trying to like, it seemed like for the most part they kept trying to like try to like hit him with their best cards, and then he would just like block, and it was just like, dude, like you need to do something else because this isn't working. But I think even as we talked about a little bit earlier, if you don't put that pressure on Oldheim, he can still like that just leaves more space for him to do some crazy big attacks as well. Um, but yeah, I mean it was well played, and I'm curious what everyone else's experience in the top 8 like with draft is, like if there were people who happened to be perhaps a little less experienced there and just like didn't read those signs, or if like you know I don't know, because like I don't know how to read those signs either, but I don't think I would make it to the top 8 uh, doing that. But it is pretty cool to see. I mean, like that's just gonna be like that's what happened at the calling in Auckland, right? It was like the only 2 people to draft Shadow were in the finals because it's like
Right.
they
Yeah.
had the best decks, and like it's kind of it's interesting that that can be the determining factor. It's like, I mean, you still have to play well. Like if you're like a potato, like you're not gonna make
Well,
it with your best deck.
if you're a potato, you didn't make it to the top 8 draft.
Fair enough, yeah.
Yeah.
But I think the importance of that game before the game is like really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Determining factor of this, because like not only, and it's like a completely different skill, like knowing the breakdown of the packs, being familiar with all the cards and what potentially could come to you, and then being, I don't know, like just being able to remember what's in a pack as it came. You look like 6 other packs and you came back like, is this is the pack I started with, but I don't really remember what was in it that well. But I think definitely it was just well played, and like same kind of consistency we talked about earlier in that other match, where it was just like he has a game plan, he's sticking to it, and other than the egregious illegal play of Deep Blue on his opponent's turn, which some people were like calling cheating. I would assume that like you know I mean, I'm gonna give people the benefit of a doubt. If you can prove that they did it intentionally, like that's one thing. But you know, he did it. I didn't catch it at first. It was just like, oh, that's a cool play right there. I would have never thought to do that. And then I see people talking to me like, you can't do that. I'm just like, what are you talking about? I was like, oh, it's an action.
Yeah.
And like,
Yeah, poor guy. He had a post on Facebook, like,
oh really?
trying to clarify that, yeah, because people are like going after him about that.
I'm sure, but like if the other it's on the other player too. Like if they don't catch it, and the judges aren't gonna be there, overseeing the gameplay and maintaining like the efficacy of that, like that's it. Like they both messed up, and you can't fully determine if that was the reason he won that game, but it was a pretty good turn for the opponent, and he just got completely shut down because of that really interesting combo. But besides that, like he just Nam just played great. Every match I saw him in, he was just, like he was solid.
Crushing it, yeah.
Yeah, so like clearly he's a very good player, and having not heard his name in any other kind of context before, I was excited to see like this newer player.
Well, yeah, he was at Vegas. He is slightly better than me. He got 23rd, whereas I got 25th.
Cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, so kind of my bounce back off of you two. I would ask him if he perhaps like valued cards differently than other players were valuing them in all of his drafts, so he could continue his Oldheim barrage. Because if he's valuing different picks than everybody else, he can still like force Oldheim for that particular game plan, perhaps, than what everybody else was. And I think, him winning the calling is just, he's also rewarded for reading the signals, right? It's like being able to still draft Oldheim, even if it is dried up or whatever, I mean, it seems like he was going to play that no matter what. But potentially there is a chance that he like changes his game plan and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And but that's what happens if everybody else isn't going to read the signals. Then the player who's most comfortable with their deck or with a certain hero gets to draft that hero, and has the better chance of winning on the day. And then to kind of go to your point, Colin, about like players just like hitting their heads against the brick wall that was control. It was like, I think I was sitting there doing the same thing. Like, why are you just doing this? Like, try to craft an end game here and friggin' beat this guy. Like, stop just giving him all of your best cards to go into the discard pile, So hopefully players will practice against control a little bit, so that they like understand how to like figure out what cards they need and pitch stack their deck like correctly. Because I think that's like in limited how you got to beat it, right? Is like you just have to like pitch in a way that like crafts a turn that goes over the top or goes too wide or something like that. Yep. Like I really would have liked it if Brendan had won his semifinal or his quarterfinals and semifinals, because I'm sure that with like Lexi's dominate ability and stuff, he was probably going to be able to craft an end game to give Nam a run for his money at least. Might not still beat him, but could have been a better game plan than just perhaps like, I'll just add in these other 8 cards I drafted that I can play or something,
I don't know. I have some pushback about that.
Hell yeah.
I mean, I agree with you in that is the way to beat that deck, obviously, right? But I think it was in the semifinals when he played against a Briar player, and in the finals, both of his opponents were like very much trying to do this, right? Like the Briar player was trying to maximize every bit of arcane damage he had. So rather than just allowing Oldhim to block or use his defense reaction, he would prioritize playing like a,
A
just a
blue
yellow
shockwave.
attack, right? That
Yeah.
does an arcane, and was trying
Yeah.
to like maximize all of that was in his deck. And I thought in the final, the player utilized Zimmerman utilized like every pump and every arrow he had with dominate effectively, right? He like used his life very efficiently and just like maximized that. But the sheer amount of earth blues and defense reactions, right? Because even these players like trying to play as efficiently as possible just didn't have enough gas in their limited decks to get past this, I think. So
What?
I think it could have been done better. And I think, maybe they could have drafted a little bit differently if control is on their minds. But I think that they did adapt and tried really hard to, to combat that. It was just like his one Oldhim deck at the table with all of the good cards, I think was just too good. I think if like they played I think if he played any of those top 8 games back again, he would win, 80% of them or 90 or, whatever, like the majority of them, just because of the quality there. And again, like we were talking about, if you pitch stack too hard without doing much, right, then he does swing back for 7 or 9 or something. And so this like absolute control deck puts on so much pressure that you only have like a couple of those okay, I'll take 7 to then like pitch stack and also swing turns.
Totally. I agree with you 100%, that a part of it is like you said, the quality of his deck being the only Oldhim player at the table, right? And that even though we do see that Briar player kind of pivot his play style, it's just like the cards are spread so thin amongst 5 players that, even though he maybe has like in theory a good idea, he just doesn't have the juice to get there. But I think those are really good points.
Well, which also begged the question, because I was wondering, like, so anybody who's paying attention would have known that this guy was very good and on Oldhim all day, right? So nobody chose to compete with him in the draft in order to kind of maybe water down his deck. So they chose to kind of like maybe collectively chose to not compete with him and allow him to have all the best cards. But maybe that's just a choice because you already know one player is going to be on Oldhim. Odds are another 1 or maybe 2 will be. So that's like there's more competition there, just knowing somebody's auto into that. It just makes for a tough decision when you're going in. Right?
Yeah, totally.
But it turns out if somebody else had drafted Oldhim, they would have had the cream of the crop of cards as well, and also like slightly diluted this other deck. But it's a tough call.
Yeah, I think that's also a really interesting point. The psychology of the top 8 draft table, right? Like, do we know he's going Oldhim? Whose responsibility is it to cut him off from that? etc. Like, I think that's a really interesting thing. And if we fail as players, we can then become post-draft interviewers and make our living that way.
It's I feel like it's that kind of thing where you're like, oh well, surely someone else is gonna like take care of that and draft,
right?
And it's just like I don't have to do that. I'll be fine on these other things. And I'm looking at his deck. It's on the Fab TCG site. He has 1 card that's not playable. He has 1 Dazzling Crescendo, and the rest are all just like absolutely playable cards. And it's like, wow, like it's a very, very strong deck he drafted, and like it's like someone should have at least hate drafted Oak and Old, but maybe he does pick one for him.
Pack one, pick one. Yeah.
But very, very interesting to see how that played out. But yeah, we'll see what happens in the next. Is it this weekend? Is there another one this week?
It's this weekend, so October 23rd and 24th.
Nice.
So that's what we're gonna end with. We kind of ran out of time to talk about the ProQuest, but we'll save that for the podcast version of our podcast.
We also didn't get to see any of the ProQuest because it's not on stream, so we just
Totally.
know who won.
So we'll
huge shout out for the Plume Summerwood fetch though. Not on the deep blue turn, but he did it like multiple times, and that's a baller play. Against all of the dominate in this meta, dominated thump or dominate arrow or whatever. That's
totally. Big shout out to Nam. Like, great job, dope hat, awesome work. Yeah,
dope hat.
Yeah, totally. Had a dope hat on. Okay, so last two things. We're going to announce our winner for our t-shirt giveaway, which y'all really slept on that t-shirt. But that's fine.
It's a collector's item.
Totally. Never going to be made again. Alpha Investments level of collector's item. But so the last thing we're going to talk about just briefly is what are your guys' kind of predictions or expectations from Cincinnati coming up this weekend? Colin.
I mean, based off very little, I would assume more people are going to try to play Oldhim and see if they can, hang there. And I think a lot of people will probably fail because the discipline to play control is difficult if that's not a style you're accustomed to or into.
Within the time limit too.
Yeah, being able to do that, like make the right choices, like especially in draft, But we'll see. That's my hot take. Probably not. I don't know about in sealed, but maybe we'll see. I still think we'll have a lot of Briars in sealed just because, there's just a lot of people. Not everybody's great at the calling.
Yeah. Isaac.
Same deal. Just like a little bit more Oldhim,
Nailed it.
Also, I think really, really good players who are prepping for this will probably practice sealed or draft, keeping in mind playing into control as well, right? So, like, I think there'll be, a bump in percentage of Oldhims, right? I don't know if many more will do that much better. Like, I don't know how many, if that will be a huge preference at the top tables. But again, if you're drafting Briar or Lexi, is there a way to draft it a little more combo oriented in case you play into control? But still, the vast amount, like this Oldhim deck was excellent. The vast amount of decks players played were kind of run-of-the-mill Oldhim or just the normal archetypes. So it did not affect that many players. You still have to have everything else in mind. It, just as highly weighted.
Totally. That's great. Yeah. I think Lexi is a really good pick in the right hands to kind of win Cincinnati. There's just like some pretty insane things that deck can do. I think particularly in lightning. So if you wind up with a lightning, if the right person with Lexi winds up in the top 8 draft, it could be, I think, devastating. That's going to be my kind of, perhaps maybe the dark horse of Cincinnati. I would really that's my biggest hope, right? Is that there is some sort of parity between this Dallas and Cincinnati, that it's just not Oldhim control that wins back to back,
Yep.
Agreed. I'm gonna pick Briar though, because that deck like accidentally does 20 damage turns. Under an excellent pilot and excellent drafting, you could have a really good combo Briar deck.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
I think too.
Cool.
I'm interested in. I know we won't know, but like I'm sure there's multiple people going to both callings and having that much experience. Like that's just an incredible amount of experience you've gained in sealed draft. So I think that'll step up the gameplay even more, and that'll be.
Hell yeah. All right. T-shirt giveaway. So on our previous reaction step, we had a t-shirt giveaway for one person who commented on the video and was a subscriber. And the winner is John Franny. So we'll be in touch with you, John. Yep, congratulations. You won a Johnny Blue Razor large t-shirt. So hopefully that fits you. It's non-refundable. So if you don't want it, let us know. So yeah, be in touch and we'll be in touch, etc.
Nice.
That being said, we're going to do another giveaway. We're going to give away some stickers or whatever else we can find.
We got some card
Once-
sleeves.
Cool. We got some Attack Action Podcast card sleeves we're going to give away.
I'm going to bump it up, and we're going to give away some Team Covenant promos.
Hell yeah.
Oh
Promos.
shit! Nice.
Okay.
But we got to hit at least 100 subscribers, which we're like very close to, so it should be very easy. hopefully.
Yeah, totally. We're looking at you, Mike Popovich.
Yeah, subscribe this time. And
Subscribe,
comment.
bro. Yeah.
You have surely done enough, but could also subscribe.
It's
what we're
part
gonna do-
of the rules.
Yeah, totally. Here's your Kool-Aid. So again, you got to leave a comment in this video. I don't care what you say. Shave your mustache, Taylor. Whatever. Leave a comment.
That
Be a
person is
subscriber.
disqualified.
Comment. Be a subscriber. Okay. And then next month, when we do our next reaction step, we will announce the winner then also. So hopefully that's clear. Hopefully you've made it this far.
We should
To
announce
know
these
that
up
there's
front, yeah.
a contest. Well, I think it's like the least important thing, you know?
It should be the title of the video.
Yeah, totally. I think the
Giveaway.
content is like way more exciting. So, so yeah, if you wind up, so what is it? Leave a comment. Yeah.
Subscribe.
Okay, we'll do it that
Leave a
way.
comment.
Subscribe, rather than it being the 100th subscriber.
Yeah. No.
That-
Once we
that's
hit
true.
100, but we have to hit 100. So that's
By the
step
next
one is
reaction
like
step.
get your friends to subscribe if you've already subscribed. And then
Gotcha.
if you leave a comment and are a subscriber, you are in the runnings.
Got it.
Nice.
Cool. Way to smooth that out, producer.
Totally. It's important to end on a strong note, and we're really.
It wouldn't be one of our productions if there wasn't some sort of fiddly bit in there, which also Mike Popovich loves it when there's fiddly bits. Okay, well, there will be a screen that flashes with all of our socials and where you can find us. Check out the podcast. We have almost 30 episodes of the podcast up for your earballs to enjoy. And you can find all of us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, etc. You'll see all that stuff. I really appreciate everyone listening. Check out our Patreon. You get to join the Discord once you are a part of the Patreon, as low as $4 a month. 1 beer or coffee. That's it. That's all that price is.
Not in
And you
LA.
get to
That's
hang out.
not a beer in LA. But still.
Okay, well,
it's
exactly.
just
Less
gestures
if you
of
get it
appreciation.
than a beer, then. Less than
If
a
you
beer.
get it at the gas station and drink it at home.
And that's the type of excellent stuff you can expect in the Discord if you're a Patreon subscriber.
That
So I
pictures
appreciate
of
you all.
alligators.
Isaac and Colin, I appreciate you guys. Thank you for being here on this YouTube video.
Thanks, Taylor. Good night, everyone.
Yep. That's it. Goodbye.
Bye. Do our awkward waving again. And like a star wipe.
Cool. Good work, everybody.